Hello, everyone. My name is Mickey Dusdovich, and tonight's film, welcome to Film Talk. In tonight's film, we're going to be talking about Set on Intent. And joining us tonight is Tate Larrick.
Hey, everybody.
He's the director of the film. We're going to chat a little bit about the film. So, Tate, can you just start by letting us know how this project came about?
Good question. It came about rather organically. Christian is a good buddy of mine, and he is also a character, and I am constantly trying to find ways to hone my storytelling skills, and he was kind of embarking on this new or old craft of his that he was kind of transitioning into a new business and of surfboard shaping. And so I wanted to kind of document that, and it's just a good excuse to kind of sit down with him and hear his story, as most filmmaking is. It's kind of this selfish voyeuristic endeavor to learn more about people.
Yeah, now Christian does a beautiful poetic read throughout the film. And I want to talk to you about the idea of having him write down what shaping is to him and these double fins.
Yeah. He's an incredible author. First of all, he wrote a book called Voyage of the Cormorant. And then he also writes, I think he still is writing for the Coastal Voice or the Voice or something like that down in Carpinteria, which is awesome. And everything he writes in Surfer's Journal and whatnot is gold. And so I wanted to, but he, on the same side, he's also very long-winded. So I wanted him to kind of sit down and put some intention into writing something concise that was kind of, in a sense, a mission statement for what he was embarking on, because everything he does is poetic. He's kind of the most unassuming poet. I just kind of wanted to hear where his mind went, and then it went a really cool place. So we just kept it there.
Now, what was interesting about his writing is he was reading it while he was writing it, and then all of a sudden he asks for a cut, stop recording. Yet you keep recording through that whole thing, and then he says, I want to freestyle it. Can you talk a little bit about that choice of not actually cutting the audio and leaving it in the film?
Yeah, that came in the post process section. Chungus, sorry. So yeah, that came in the post aspect of the film. We had written something, like I said, and then we sat down to record it. And as he was reading it, he was like concerned that it was a bit too pretentious the whole time. So he kept stopping and being like, what am I saying? This is just surfing, which as a surfer, you encounter often people trying to kind of complicate kind of a simple act. And so that's what he found himself doing. And so I was kind of witnessing his editing process in live, right there. And so that little portion I kept because that was probably the most organic aspect of it, is because he wrote this awesome thing. He starts reading it and he starts finding his voice as he's reading it. And then he's just like, I'm going to send it. And that was, yeah.
And well, it's a beautiful part of the film, and I commend you on leaving that in because it works really well with the film. I would like to also talk about your framework and your setup for framing the film, because it's very much centralized. You keep everybody very much in frame right in the middle, and you give it beautiful borders all the way around. Can you talk a little bit about your choice for framing it perfectly like that?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what my intention was there. I don't really know if I had much intention. I think, first of all, I mean, physically, Christian's like super lanky and tall. And so I normally shoot wide anyways. And so him being on the edge of the frame could potentially kind of make him look more ogre-ish. So I like keeping people centered, because then there's also cool opportunities to do different graphic treatments around them and whatnot. But I like vignette as well. So when you have someone centered, the vignette kind of naturally frames them.
Nice. And I want to talk on the subject of filming in the water. You have these beautiful surf shots of Christian, and I want to tell us a little bit about how you're able to capture these shots and what it's like filming in the water compared to just filming steady on land.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Santa Barbara, and I am so privileged and blessed to have the influence that I've had. Like Morgan Mawson's one, Will Adler's one, Mike Degree was a huge influence on me, and they all have very unique styles, and they all shoot in the water. And so there's a huge barrier to entry financially to get into water cinematography, just because the housings themselves are like, the one I have is pretty rudimentary. It's an aluminum box. Like every engineer I show it to is kind of like, how much did you pay for this thing? And when I tell them, they're like, holy crap, that's nuts. But there's not that many people making them. You kind of have to go a certain route. And so I had actually just gotten that housing for a new camera, and that was like probably the second time using it in the water. So it makes filmmaking a lot more physical, which I enjoy. Yeah. And you're just kind of floating around. Honestly, so much of the footage is unusable a lot of the times when you're shooting in the water for whatever reason, whether it's like the housing is fogging or the current's too strong, so you're getting pushed down the beach, or water drops on the lens, like right where they don't need to be, things like that. So it was really cool to kind of be out there one of the first times with this new housing and feel like I was really getting it. Other than the fact, there was one moment in the filming where Christian swore something swam underneath him, and the place we were filming is notorious for the men in gray suits. And so I swam to the nearest rock, which was about 3 feet underwater, and kind of precariously floated on top of this rock, assuming that a shark couldn't get me if I was balancing on a rock, which is folkloric, no doubt, but I survived.
Well, I'm glad you survived and you're here today.
Yeah.
You mentioned having influence by Mike Degree, and from what I understand, he may have mentored you early on. Can you talk a little bit about working with Mike?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish that Mike was still here. No doubt. I met him through my father, who they were friends through the Natural History Museum. And I remember the first memory of Mike sitting on my dad's lap, and they're sitting and talking, and Mike, being gregarious, was kind of like, you want to see something exciting? And I was like, sure. And he showed me his shark bite scar, and it was so nonchalant. The way that he talked about it, I was like, man, if this is like his initial party trick, I can't even believe the stories that nobody hears. And yeah, so I got to spend some awesome time with Max and Mike growing up, and I wish that I had obviously spent more time. But later on, as I started to show more interest in filmmaking, Mike started to kind of shepherd me right before his passing, which his character, I think, influenced me more than his filmmaking. But the fact that he had a beautiful family and had a beautiful lifestyle and took this path kind of gave me a lot of opportunity to kind of see myself in his position. Yes.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, he was a good friend of the festivals and all of ours,
Yeah.
and I kind of have the same intro as that's the first time I met him. He showed me a shark bite, and I was like, wow, okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So this is a guy I can work with. So I want to talk a little bit about the color of the film. Can you tell us a little bit about it, because it's so very crisp and sharp, and you have all these oranges, yellows, blues, and greens, and they just play off of the sky and the water so well. And then just the surfboards that he has are just vivid and bright. Can you talk a little bit about the choice of color?
Yeah, that was all Clinton Kyle Hollister, who works in town. His company's called Arlington Peak. He's a colorist and editor, and he's a good friend. And there was no budget for this film, and I hate doing that, but it seems to be the case a lot of times with films that I want to make and there's no commercial backing. a huge part of, I'm going to kind of round about this one, but a huge thing that I've been learning in my short career as a filmmaker is my weaknesses. And those tend to come up a lot. And so it's been really humbling and also incredible to surround myself with people whose strengths are my weaknesses. And my understanding of color is, I've kind of found a way that works for me, and it's easy and simple. But when I do things that I put more heart into, I kind of like will sometimes ask Clinton a favor or whatever and be like, hey, do you mind coloring this? And he's totally badass. And I kind of say, I try to give direction as if I know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, okay, I want the blacks crushed and I want this like that. And he's like, okay, cool. Yeah. And he kind of does his own thing and it works and it's awesome. So he's like, I mean, he's the best colorist I know, no doubt. Yeah.
Very
So I got to give him the kudos for the color. He gave me one pass and I was like, cool, but make it more. And then he made it more, and I was like, okay, that's cool. I'm into that.
And I want to talk a little bit about in the film, you while Christopher's shaping the boards, you project onto him surf footage. Can you talk a little bit about that creative idea and how it all came about?
Yeah. Well, I think, surfing is pretty overdone, especially as a surfer, because all the content that I'm ingesting is surf stuff. And then on top of that, it's like, I don't know how many times you can like just watch a white guy shape a surfboard. And it's kind of, I mean, it's a cool process if you're in there, or if it's your surfboard that he's shaping, or that you know him or whatever. But it's been done a ton and really well. And so I was trying to think like, okay, this is a video about a surfboard shaper and he's so much more, but this was kind of the focus, was his surfboard shaping. And then I was like, man, it would be cool. And this is kind of where the title came from as well, because Christian shapes boards that are really born out of his own interest in the way to surf, in his way of surfing, his style. So I was like, it would be really cool to figure out a way to visually represent the way that he wants the surfboards to surf while he's actually making them, and kind of trying to visually connect the theory to the practice. Because it's kind of a pseudoscience. I mean, surfboard shapers will do something and it will work, and then they'll try it again and it won't work. And then they'll be like, this is the concept, or this is a theory. And there's a lot of people like Ryan Lovelace and others in town that have it really dialed. But that said, there's a lot of, it's just experimentation, So that was kind of the idea behind projecting, is that we went and shot surfing one day. And Christian is like the most frothed out Grom you've ever met. Like, he's like, if there's surf in the water, he's like, we gotta go surf. And I'm like, okay, chill out. And so we went and surfed and shot it. And then we projected it on him surfing his initial board, like a prototype board, and then him shaping another board that was supposed to surf kind of like it. And so the idea is you have him maybe doing a turn and he wants the turn to feel a certain way. And then he's also shaping a board to kind of perfect that feel, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So that's where the theory was born from.
Nice. And can we talk a little bit about the editing? And it is such a short film, coming in at just about 4 minutes, like a little bit over 4 minutes. Can you talk a little bit about the editing process for something so short? Because I'm sure you could have made it longer and you made this choice. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I am a millennial by birth. And so everything that I consume normally is shorter, and it's like my ADHD is like, it's more than 2 minutes, I can't watch this. So I think that definitely influences me, because I'm like cutting something and I'm like, whoa, that's cool. And then I put it together and it's like 8 minutes and I'm like, the only person that's going to watch this is my mom. So I cut it down to like 2 minutes, or if at all longer. But normally the feedback that I get, especially from my partner Donnie, is he's like, cut it shorter. And I'm like, oh, you're right, that's the missing piece, which I think is kind of the death of filmmaking in some ways. But also there's a cool aspect to that. And frankly, being a young filmmaker, there's like, the bigger the projects get, the more daunting they become, the bigger the proposed budgets you want for a longer project, the bigger the investment of time and energy and creative space and whatever. And So most of the stuff that I make is really short, and we're kind of now stepping into an area where we're making we're hoping to make longer films, but kind of figure out how to mesh the like millennial perspective that everything needs to be 2 minutes or less with this like cool Kawanastasi-esque like visual meditation aspect, and figure out if there is a way to mesh that. So it's like Uncut Gems was a good example of that. It was like an hour and a half or 2 minutes or whatever the runtime was of that, but the entire time you're like, it's moving too quickly, and then it ends and you're like, what just happened in my life? And so yeah, I don't know if it needs to be that manic, but trying to mesh, that's what I guess I'm trying to do theoretically in filmmaking, is try to mesh that like 2 minute or less perspective with something that's visually captivating and storyline is captivating enough to like keep it going for longer. But
Okay.
you're right, it's a short film, and frankly, I made it well long ago now in my goldfish memory. That there's so many aspects of it that now I would like have scrapped or changed or reshot differently, and so that's like there's a bit of like creative dysmorphia going on with it, and I think that's frankly always it. I don't know if I've ever made anything that I'm like, cool, that was awesome. I'm always kind of like, that was cool, but I think the next one will be better, and maybe that'll be the thing my whole life. I don't know. I'd love to learn from people
Yeah.
who are further down the road.
Now, was there anything that you had to cut out that you really wanted to keep in just because you wanted to keep it so short?
Nothing I can think of off the top of my head. No. As you know, I kind of weaseled my way in there at the last minute, like or right on the deadline, I think. And I was kind of like, hey, I've got some films. And you were like, yeah, okay, we can do this. So thank you for that. But also I think that kind of influenced the process as well, which is good for me. If I don't have a timeline, normally projects don't get done. And so that was awesome to kind of be like, oh, okay, we got to do this. Cutting this out, cutting that out, cutting that out, leaving that. Okay, we're good. Yeah.
And I want to talk to you a little bit about the music of the film. It's such a beautiful score, and then at the 3-minute marker, there's this song that comes in. And can you tell us a little bit about this song and the score itself?
Yeah. The score was, so I have a business partner named Donnie Hedden, and he is like a closet, really talented musician. And so I was like, Donnie, I made this little surf flick. Can you do something for it? And he was like, sure. And so I'm pretty sure he was like actually in a closet with a little, like, I don't know, like just a tiny little mic. And he was just kind of like making weird noises. And then I was like, cool, okay, we'll use that. And then we cut to it. And he kind of understands my style as well. So it was very symbiotic. And like the vocals at the end are really funny, and it kind of ties back into Christian's objective of not really being like a process shaper, but more like a hand-shaped organic shaper, which is kind of a different aspect of the craft, but that's another thing. So he kind of like talks about, I don't want to do, I don't want to be whatever corporate and all these different things, all these different themes in the film. So it's kind of like, it was a very organic process and also not a very well thought out process. And he was just kind of like, I'm going to do this. And I was like, cool, it works. Okay. Yeah. It was really funny to actually hear it in the Arlington on the, with the big speakers and be like, whoa, that was an interesting decision.
It definitely worked for the film. Donnie seems like a very talented guy, and that music was really cool. Really worked out well. I want to talk to you a little bit about your younger self. Back to 2011. That's when I first actually met you, because of a program that we run here at the film festival called the 10-10-10. And you're actually the winner that year for filmmaking. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with 10-10-10? And
Yeah, totally. I was in the Mad Academy, and which was, I still believe in that program 110%. I think it's awesome. I think if your child, anyone listening, is interested in doing stuff like that, I think the program is incredible, and I would put my kids in it in a heartbeat. I think I mean, that whole process was insane. I got like my car booted. I got poison oak. I got like 102 fever in the process of that 10 days. And luckily, Max Degree, Mike's son, was a huge help. Chris Reel was a huge help. Everybody, there was like a handful of people that were really involved, and they all kind of like helped me help myself in a lot of ways. And again, that was the first introduction to, I was making piecemeal type of projects, and then I realized that there are things that I am not good at, and I need to find people that are good at those things and like doing them, and so that we can kind of balance each other out, and they could help me and I can help them, and we could succeed together, which is part of the cool collaborative nature of it. And also was like that was my first time seeing that. It's like, holy crap, I'm quite literally like sweating bullets and swelled up with poison oak and can't have no transportation, and all these things are happening, and I literally just need some help. We took like some 5-hour energies and just kind of like went full Vegas mode on it for a little bit.
Yeah, because that was back in the time that we were still doing the full just the 10 days. Now we provide a little more leeway, so they have time to prep before jumping into it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that was also the longest project I had ever made. So I was like, how do I shoot 10 minutes of interesting things and put it in this time? I mean, it was crazy to me, which Chris Reel, shout out. He was awesome. He was incredible. And he still is. I mean, he's an editor in LA and he's absolutely killing it.
Nice. And before we go here, I'd like to see where you're at now. What are you up to?
Yeah, I kind of took a roundabout way of getting back into film stuff. Since I did the 10-10-10, I went to school for cultural anthropology because I couldn't get into film school, and ended up dropping out a couple times. Mike was a huge influence of me staying in school, and then he just before he passed away, I was planning on kind of doing some projects with him, and then that sort of fell through, and I went all these different places, and then ended up studying cultural anthropology in Flagstaff, and then graduated, and for whatever reason was like, oh, I should just try my hand at freelance filmmaking. And that was 4 years ago now or something like that. And we're doing, as of the first of this year, I've officially partnered with my buddy Donnie, who's been a huge inspiration to me my whole life. And we're doing this thing called Reunion Originals. It's like a commercial production house. And then we also have like a rental space in Santa Barbara that's it's like we've got a cyc wall and backdrops and the whole deal. So if anybody needs a space to rent in Santa Barbara, hit us up.
I'll have to come check it out, and congratulations on the success. That's amazing that you're doing that here.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I actually, one redact, I forgot about the water housing or water cinematography. I actually I'm remembering now that I didn't have the money at the time to purchase the housing that I needed for my camera. So by Marion Productions out in Goleta, those guys are totally badass at what they do. They actually trusted me with their housing. And so I put my camera in their housing, and it totally worked. And they were kind of like, please don't break this. And I was like, I won't. And I'm pretty sure I didn't even know I needed insurance. I was just like totally harebrained, and I'm so thankful nothing happened. But they trusted me, and it worked.
Well, that's great to hear that we have so many wonderful people in the film community here in Santa Barbara. So
yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah, I'm so impressed really quickly about how many talented people there are in Santa Barbara. And although as we're all expanding and getting bigger, the pond seems to be getting smaller, but there's still so much work, and we're beginning to find all these symbiotic ways to support each other and help each other. And that's been really cool. That's been super cool to kind of be like, well, these people I looked up to, I'm now working with, and vice versa. And cool ways to kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this studio space. You guys have all this gear. We could rent this and figure out ways to kind of like support each other. And so we can all kind of go global.
Oh, that's great. I love to hear it, Tate. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and taking time out of your day to join us. Best of luck with everything going on forward. And yeah, have a great night. And thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. And to everybody out there, please join us next week. We'll have another wonderful film. Check for the email tomorrow, what film that's going to be, and another wonderful conversation. All right. Take care, everybody.